You're diving into the life of Evelyn Hugo, a name synonymous with old Hollywood glamour, but also whispered with intrigue. We're talking 7 husbands, a mountain of speculation and a life lived in front of the cameras. But was it the real Evelyn they saw?
That's the question, isn't it? We have excerpts from her memoir, glimpses from Sub Rosa and other gossip rags of the day. It's like piecing together a puzzle where someone's already arranged the pieces to tell a story.
And that's why you're here. Our listener wants to go deeper than the carefully curated image. What's the real story behind those 7 husbands?
What's fascinating is that Evelyn's memoir, the one she gives to Monique Grant to write, starts in stark contrast to the starlet we think we know. She's Evelyn Herrera back then, a girl in Hell's Kitchen. Talk about world away from red carpets.
It makes her rise to fame all the more dramatic. But to kickstart this, she leaves behind Ernie Diaz, her husband. He seems to adore her, even paying for those early acting classes. Was that a necessary sacrifice, or a sign of her ruthlessness?
This first decision ripples throughout her whole story, doesn't it? It's ambition versus love, right from the start. Ernie's from that world she wants to escape. He represents staying the same. Evelyn Hugo isn't about staying put.
It makes you wonder, though, did she ever look back and question that choice? Or did the allure of Hollywood quickly eclipse any doubts?
The memoir hints at moments of reflection, but never outright regret. It's almost as if constructing Evelyn Hugo required a clean break. A new name, a new city. She was even willing to change her appearance to fit the Hollywood mold.
She transforms herself completely. And then comes Don Adler, this whirlwind romance with Hollywood royalty. Everyone was obsessed with them, the epitome of the golden couple.
Don, the son of 2 legends, was the ultimate prize. On paper, a publicist's dream match. But as often happens in Hollywood, the reality behind those dazzling smiles was far more complicated.
Evelyn reveals Don's dark side in her memoir. He was physically abusive. To think that behind the staged photos and gushing interviews there was this hidden violence. Did she ever consider exposing him?
That's where Evelyn's control over her narrative becomes crucial. Remember, this is the golden age of Hollywood, but also a time when a woman's career could be destroyed by scandal, especially one involving domestic abuse.
So instead of speaking out, she used makeup to conceal the bruises. Even strategically choreographed public appearances with Don to avoid suspicion. That takes an incredible amount of strength, but also cunning. Is it possible she felt trapped by her own success?
It's a question that hangs over this entire period of her life. She's climbing the ladder of fame, achieving the dreams she had back in Hell's Kitchen, but at what cost? And how much of her was eroding beneath the carefully crafted facade?
It's heartbreaking to think about. Did she ever find a love where she didn't have to choose between her career and her heart? I mean, her relationship with Celia St. James, her co-star in Little Women, seems like it could have been that.
Right, their chemistry.
Both on and off screen.
Oh, it's undeniable.
Celia. Now that relationship is arguably the most discussed part of Evelyn's story.
You're right, the chemistry was electric. What started as a studio-manufactured publicity stunt quickly blossomed into something much deeper.
But this was the 1950s.
Right.
Being openly LGBTQ+ wasn't just taboo, it was a career killer. The pressure they must have faced to keep their love a secret, especially in the spotlight of Hollywood, must have been immense. Did they ever discuss going public?
The memoir hints at dreams of running away together, escaping that constant fear of exposure. There's a particularly poignant anecdote about a trip they took to Mexico, a brief period where they could actually be themselves without the prying eyes of the paparazzi.
And then that photo surfaced in a local Mexican paper, the one that hinted at their relationship. It feels like that's the moment when Evelyn's carefully constructed world could have crumbled around her.
Exactly. It forced her to confront a stark choice. Her career, her image, everything she'd built, or Celia. And as we know, Evelyn chose the former.
It's a decision that's so difficult to grapple with. On one hand, you can understand the fear, the potential consequences of being outed in that era. But on the other hand, it meant sacrificing a love that seemed so genuine, so freeing.
And it wasn't a clean break either. Evelyn's memoir makes it clear that Celia remained a constant presence in her life, even when they were separated by distance and other relationships.
It's tragic, really. They were both robbed of the chance to fully experience their love, to live openly and authentically. Did finding that kind of love, even if it wasn't with Celia, factor into her later choices in husbands?
That's an interesting question, and one that I'm sure many people have pondered. The memoir doesn't offer any easy answers. Evelyn's marriage to Harry Cameron, for example, seems to be born out of a desire for stability, a partnership built on mutual respect and understanding.
And of course, there's Connor, their daughter. Motherhood seemed to soften Evelyn, allowing a different side of her to emerge. Did having Connor change her perspective on love and family, especially after the sacrifices she had made earlier in her life?
The memoir reviews a tenderness in Evelyn's relationship with Connor that wasn't always present in her romantic relationships. It's as if motherhood allowed her to tap into a well of vulnerability she had kept hidden for so long.
But even with that tenderness, she and Harry eventually transitioned from romantic love to a deep friendship and co-parenting relationship. Do we think this was a choice or simply an evolution of their connection?
Evelyn hints at a mutual understanding, a recognition that their needs and desires had evolved over time, but there's also an undercurrent of sadness, a sense of what might have been if societal norms had been different.
And then tragedy strikes, not once, but twice. First, Harry passes away, and then a few years later, Celia. These losses must have been devastating for Evelyn, prompting perhaps another period of reflection on her life and the choices she'd made.
It's after Celia's death that Evelyn decides to finally share her story with the world. She seeks out Monique Grant, a young, aspiring writer, to be her biographer. Do you think she was looking for absolution, a way to control her narrative one last time?
Perhaps. Or maybe it was her way of finally being honest with herself and the world, of ensuring that her truth, her full story was told.
It's interesting that even in her final marriage to Robert Jameson, Celia's brother, there's this sense of trying to recapture something lost. Was it a way of honoring Celia's memory, or simply a desire for companionship in her later years?
It's a question that lingers even after finishing the memoir. But before we get to the ending, there's one more twist we haven't discussed. The letter. Right, the letter. This is where Evelyn goes from telling her story to revealing a secret that rocks Monique's world. It's a message from Monique's own father, James, found tucked away in Harry's belongings after his death.
It's a bombshell, for sure. The letter reveals that James was in love with Harry, a secret that adds an entirely new layer to Evelyn and Harry's unconventional relationship. It makes you question how well we can ever truly know someone, even those closest to us.
And Evelyn held on to this letter for years. It makes you wonder about her motivations for finally sharing it with Monique. Was it an act of closure for Harry? A way to challenge societal norms even in death? Or was there a deeper purpose, something she hoped Monique would take away from it?
It's a complicated act, much like Evelyn herself. Perhaps it was a way of freeing Monique from the weight of expectation, showing her that love can exist in unconventional forms. Remember, Monique's struggling with her own identity, her path as a writer. Maybe Evelyn saw a bit of herself in that.
That makes sense. It's like she's passing the torch, encouraging Monique to embrace her own truth, no matter how messy or unexpected it might be.
And in a way, that's Evelyn's legacy, isn't it? She lived life on her own terms, navigating love, ambition, and loss with a fierce determination to control her own narrative. Her story reminds us that there's always more than meets the eye, that behind every carefully constructed facade lies a tapestry of choices, sacrifices, and hidden truths.
It's certainly a story that stays with you. Evelyn Hugo, with all her flaws and complexities, challenged societal norms, broke hearts, and ultimately found peace on her own terms.
She reminds us that life isn't about perfection, but about embracing the fullness of our experiences, both the light and the shadows. And maybe, just maybe, in sharing our stories, we can empower others to do the same.
If our listener wants to delve deeper into this whirlwind of a life, I highly recommend checking out The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It's a captivating read that explores the complexities of love, ambition, and what it means to leave a mark on the world.
It's a story that prompts introspection, sparks conversation, and ultimately leaves you with a deeper understanding of the human experience.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the life of Evelyn Hugo. It's been a fascinating journey through the glitz and shadows of Hollywood's golden age, and a reminder that even the most carefully constructed narratives can't conceal the messy, beautiful truth of who we are.